Well, it was, the research I was supposed to do was unclassified research. And uh, one of the areas of inquiry involved understanding um, people's dispositions toward threat groups in the country. And so the major one being first Al-Qaeda in Iraq, later Al-Qaeda of Iraq when it became Iraqified, and then in 2007 as it renamed itself Islamic State of Iraq. And now, of course, it's undergone some other genesis as Islamic State of the Levant. So that was our prime threat group, and still is. There are major differences between the first wave of the insurgency and the second wave that Iraq is experiencing right now. The first wave of the insurgency was what we would call a complex insurgency, in which you had many warring parties that the United States and other actors had not anticipated upon the eve of invasion. We really believed that the fight, the resistance, would have been pre-planned by Saddam and his Fedayeen forces. And in actuality, it wasn't all that pre-planned at all, the resistance. And there were all these other warring parties that rose up rather quickly once we blew the lid off that dictatorship. And that came as a surprise. The other thing that happened was Al-Qaeda of Iraq stoked a sectarian civil war. So after the bombing of the Golden Mosque in Samarra, which is one of the most revered pieces of Islamic architecture in the world, aside from being a great holy shrine, a very important site for Muslims, and especially Shia Muslims, because it is a Shia shrine, that ignited a civil war. And so it was a very unusual insurgency because it was not monolithic, driven by one group, and it was not hierarchical. It was spread out and very networked, and unlike anything our forces were prepared for. Given that and what we have in Iraq today, I'm actually much more optimistic than a lot of people are, because I do not see the same patterns of fighting taking place in Iraq. While there are tensions between the different ideological groups in Iraq, especially Sunni and Shia, those tensions are contained. There is not a civil war taking place in Iraq right now. And one of the reasons for dealing with the second wave of insurgency right now is actually to prevent that from happening. Because if that happens, Iraq is finished. And so it's very important for the Iraqis, all the neighboring countries, and the world at large to make sure that that does not happen. Iraq is a very important place in the Middle East, in the Islamic world, and in the world itself. Our main mission at Central Command is to protect what we call the global commons, which would be all of those sea routes that surround those countries around, that border Iraq and also the neighboring countries there. Our real goal is to keep the commons open. And that is why we are so concerned with that part of the world right now. On my second deployment, I predicted that Islamic State would make a go for Baghdad again and try to topple the government. And there were all kinds of indicators, socially, culturally, politically, and militarily, to suggest why that would happen. So my job was to make predictions based on my research and advise commanders accordingly. I really believe that the command that I was working for in Baghdad in 2009 to 2010 on that second deployment understood that, they got it, and I'm certain that they were the kind of people who would have advised the Department of State and our president accordingly about what the indicators were and what we were reading. And so here we are with the inevitable second wave, and now it's largely the prime thing that I would recommend, and it seems to be taking place right now, is that all people, all groups in Iraq, the major tribal confederations of Iraq, the Shia Arabs, the Kurds, the Sunni Arabs, unite against a common foe, and to have all of those contiguous countries around Iraq unite against a common foe, which would be Islamic State. So there are developments taking place which are heartening. All I can say is I wish I could return there and help out. It's really frustrating when you're home in the rear, and you can't be present to be a part of that and the changes that need to take place.